Hey, hi everyone. Today, I just wanted to share some of my favorite books on Central Asian history, and no particular order to these. And I'm not going to be getting into the kind of a deeper view of each one, but just kind of talking generally about them and what I like. Um, so I hope you find this helpful, and why don't we just get started? So the first one is Peter B. Golden's introduction to the history of the Turkic peoples. This is a pretty academic book and can make for a dry read. I will say that. But what I appreciate about Golden is that he's always very careful about what we can sort of definitively say versus what's more up for speculation. And that's always an issue when I think dealing with very early Turkic history because the sources are so few and so diffuse. It's easy to make kind of big claims um, with very little evidence. And Golden, I think, is a very good scholar in that regard, where he gives you the evidence, but he always admits that, especially for not for everything, obviously, but for cases where we just don't have enough evidence that any uh, kind of conclusion is possible, and it's hard to make definitive claims. So, and Golden in this book, he goes through, as it says, a history of the Turkic peoples. He profiles um, pretty much all the major Turkic groups in Central Asia, discusses their linguistics. So mostly he approaches it linguistically to get an idea of the book, but it's a good read. Probably more of a reference work, but I think if you want to learn about Turkic history, it's a great place to start, even if it's not the most exciting book to read, unless you're someone like me where stuff is exciting. But so can also be a little hard to find. It's an academic book, German academic book, so you may have to find it online somewhere, or at a university library, something like that. The next one is The Tibetan Empire in Central Asia by Christopher Beckwith. This is a really amazing book because the breadth of sources that Beckwith used is really remarkable. I mean, um, I had the opportunity to study with him before he retired, and he's a really brilliant guy. He studied Chinese, and he knows Chinese, and he was able to assemble in this book uh, not just the Tibetan sources, which is very impressive, but he was able to work with the Tibetan sources in Old Tibetan, Chinese sources, Arab sources, and I think even Greek, maybe. I don't remember, but at any rate, an impressive array of materials, and Beckwith really makes this period in Central Asia kind of come to life in a lot of ways. Um, a period of kind of major transition, but also uh, just a fascinating age unto itself. So this is the Tibetan Empire that existed in the what would have been kind of the early European Middle Ages, roughly from the 600s to the mid 9th century, so the 800s AD. And he discusses, obviously it's mostly about the Tibetan Empire, but covers their relations with both the Abbasid Caliphate that had moved into Central Asia, the Tang Dynasty in China, and also the Turk Khanate that existed at that time. So just a really interesting period of history, and a really impressive array of materials that he assembled to write it. And one I reread a lot just because it's very interesting. I would also say the footnotes are probably worth reading, but I have not reread it in some time, so I don't remember if there how many kind of nuggets of gold are in the footnotes, but they may be worth kind of worth just as much as uh, the text of the book itself. Highly recommend it, and this one, is fairly inexpensive. Also, if you want to own it, it's been in paperback for a long time. Central Asia in World History. Another one by Peter B. Golden. This is more of a kind of survey book. It goes from antiquity up to the present day. Um, Not too much to say about it, other than it's nicely written. I think it's a good book. It's good that Golden, in particular, wrote this because, like I said, he's a pretty careful scholar. He doesn't overstate things, or he tends not to overstate things, or make kind of uh, questionable narratives, in my opinion. So it's just a nice survey. It's not that long. I think it's probably could be used like as an undergrad textbook if you wanted to, but it's just nice to read. Probably the best survey of Central Asia overall. That covers like from the early history up to the present, without. Uh, Whereas there's another book, a more recent one by Adib Khalid, that focuses on from like the Russian conquest to the present. Also very good, but if you are someone like me who's interested more in the pre kind of 18th century history, or pre 19th century history, um, the this one by Golden is maybe better for you. Uh, This is Stephen Dale's biography of Babur, of course, the founder of what would become the Mughal dynasty in South Asia. But this is his biography of Babur. Obviously, it relies on the Baburname mostly, which you should also read the Baburname. I always recommend that. But um, Dale, in this book, does a good job contextualizing Babur and the Baburname, and kind of getting at some of the more overarching themes in uh, Central Asian history during the kind of late 15th, early 16th century. As the title suggests, the culture of empire in Central Asia, Afghanistan, and India. Not much more to say about it. Not because I dislike it or anything. It's just because it's a good book, and it's about Babur's life. So check it out. Certainly one I'd like to own a hard copy of someday, but it is a Braille book, so kind of uh, hard to get a hold of affordably. But another one you might need to find online, or go to your a university library if you have access to that, and do a loan request or check it out. The next one is Timurids in Transition by Maria E. Subtelny. This is more of a technical academic work, but I think if you are interested in Timurid history, it's very important to read because Subtelny gets into how the Timurids transitioned, or tried to transition, that is, based on the title, from like a kind of conquest state under Timur to something that was hopefully going to be more kind of bureaucratic and stable. Um, and there were successes and failures in that area that Subtelny discusses in the book. But good one. Like I said, may not be for some people, may not be the most gripping reading, but very interesting, and casts the Timurids in a more balanced light. I think people mainly focus on Timur Tamerlane himself, which is understandable. But his successors did endure for some time, so it wasn't like everything collapsed after he died, and it shows that his successors were trying to develop a more bureaucratic imperial state, and also gets into the role of irrigation and water in kind of the Timurid dynasty's role in managing that. Very important in Central Asia, just because there's not a lot of water, and Iran also, just because there's not a lot of water to begin with. More Iran, in terms of the geography it covers, than Central Asia, but the Timurids kind of spanned both regions of kind of Turkic, Central Asia, and Iran. So another Brill book. Another one you may have to find online. Actually, this one is on Internet Archive. You can just read it. But another one I think I would like to own a hard copy of someday. Would be nice. And the last one by Vasily Bartold, a real, founding father of Oriental studies, especially in Russia, but I think also kind of in the whole world. And this is kind of 4 in 1. So this is 4 books. This is 4 studies on the history of Central Asia, translated by Vladimir Minorsky, and another interesting scholar, Vladimir Minorsky. But this is kind of a really great resource if you want to learn about Bartold's work. And this was obviously written in the 19th and early 20th century, but as I read it, it holds up very well, I think. There's details you can obviously kind of dispute, but Bartold, if nothing else, was very, I think, a very good scholar, very good at reading the sources, knowing the material, and basing his judgments on that. And this book is available on Internet Archive, and there's a version of it that compiles all 4 original volumes into one, so you can download it and just read the whole thing continuously. But the volumes are different, as kind of the title suggests. You have Volume 1 is a short history of Turkestan. Volume 2 is a history of Semirechye, which is today a region in Kazakhstan that was in Bartold's time obviously part of the Russian Empire, later the Soviet Union. And the third is Ulugh-Beg, so that's a study of Timur's grandson and the successor to Shah Rukh. And the fourth is Mir Alishir, which is about Alishir Navai. And one of the versions includes another study that is Bartold's History of the Turkmen People. And this is a really impressive work still, I think, in terms of Bartold's breadth of knowledge. And, he understood the events that were in the sources very well, clearly. And so he does provide a nice narrative, but it's also analytical. It's not just kind of heaping up facts, so to speak. He's very analytical, and Barthold, more generally, is an important figure in the development of Oriental studies because he was a historian first, and now that may seem strange, but a lot of the work on the Islamic world done in the West, obviously, or in Russia, was done philologically, um, which is not bad, but it does kind of create a certain perspective in the scholarship. It's not like historical per se. It's more focused on purely the language. Whereas Barthold was obviously a philologist too, but he was a historian who used the tools of philology to, understand the history. So maybe that's kind of a subtle difference, but it's worth mentioning, I think. And I really cannot say much more. I mean, it's nice to read. Obviously, it may some of the details may be superseded by more modern scholarship, but um, he covers a lot and he provides a chronology. So Barthold, I think, is someone who contributed a lot to the field and is very was very knowledgeable. And he was also a colleague of Zeki Validi Togon, who I've talked about on this channel before. And he was tried to get Togon a scholarly position. So was very seemed to have been very personally helpful to others as well. Um, but yeah, that's Barthold's Four Studies in the History of Central Asia. And I think it's worth reading. Probably the most accessible book on here too. I mean, about several of these are on Internet Archive, but this one's the most accessible. And if you have a long car ride or like a flight or something, this is download it on your phone or tablet or something, and you can be occupied for hours. So those are some of my favorite books. Again, they weren't in any particular order, and there's a few that I could have thrown in here. Like Richard Fry's book on Central Asia, or even his uh, Golden Age of Persia, which is obviously about Iran, but historically, the two regions were pretty closely linked linguistically, culturally. So, Fry's books are nice to read. Um, I always recommend reading the Baburnameh for if you want a first-hand account of 15th century, early 16th century Central Asia and South Asia. And there's probably others I could mention, but these are some of my favorites. So maybe you found this helpful. Um, More of a lighter kind of video, not as research intensive for me, but just sharing things I enjoy, and maybe you will too. So thanks for watching, and talk to you all in the next video.